as my friend Dick Capps used to say, most of my guns especially are not encumbered by original finish. I like stories. I tell people I'm not a gun collector, I'm not a sword collector, I'm not a uniform collector, I'm a history collector. And so that's what you're stuck with tonight. This is a standard, model 1861, rifle musket. Notice I didn't say Springfield. The government never called them a Springfields. They were made, the first ones were made at the Springfield Armory, but there were many more made by various contractors. This was made by one of those contractors in 1863. There's a very good chance this was at Gettysburg. The interesting thing about it is what's carved in the stock. It says 121 NYV, 121st New York Volunteers, with a red cross. Red Cross doesn't stand for medical. It's that, in this case, that is the insignia of the 1st Division of the 6th Army Corps. When I bought this, I was hoping that there'd be a name someplace. Well, when I took the barrel off, there was a name under, in the barrel channel, George Wallace, who indeed was in the 121st New York and very likely had this gun at Gettysburg. Here's my Indian gun. How do I know it's real? Well, first of all, I know where it's been for over 90 years, or right at 90 years. And no, it wasn't my birthday present. I'm 91, but I did not get this at my first birthday. It's interesting. The butt plate's been removed. I've been told, no verification, that that quite often happened because the Indians used the butt plates as hide scrapers. I don't know whether that's true or not, but, and because of that, because probably the butt's been put down on a hard surface, the whole toe of the stock is missing on it. It's got a repair through here, a rawhide repair. And then when I got it, I could tell it had been military issue because there's the remains of a scar here that was caused by the sling swivel from the cavalry sling that carried it. So I checked on the serial number, or a friend of mine did for me. This serial number is 96448. 96447 was issued to a trooper in Company B of the 1st California Cavalry. We only have the serial numbers for one company. There were 11 others. So the odds are very, very good that this ended up with the 1st California Cavalry, who operated in the Southwest, New Mexico, Arizona, northern Texas. And they were mustered out after the war in 1866 at a place called Baird's Ranch in New Mexico. This pistol was owned by Spruce McCoy Baird, whose Baird's Ranch was named after, obviously. Spruce McCoy Baird was a Kentuckian by birth, Texan by adoption, fought in the Mexican War with a Texas regiment as an officer, moved to New Mexico because he was appointed judge of Santa Fe County, Texas, for his service in the Mexican War. we're all standing in Santa Fe County, Texas. Santa Fe County, Texas was a rather extravagant land claim that the state of Texas made from El Paso all the way up the Front Range to southern Wyoming. When he showed up and said, "I am the judge," they said, "Like hell you are," because during the time it took him to get there, the U.S. had settled the land claim with Texas. Anyway, he stayed in Texas, or in New Mexico, and in 1860 became the Attorney General. When the Confederates came through in 62, one column actually stayed at Baird's Ranch. This is a drawing made by a soldier named Petticolas, who served in the 4th Texas. When the Confederates were defeated, or at least retreated, after Glorieta, he decided he was probably no longer welcome in New Mexico. So he and his family retreated with the Confederates down the west side of the Rio Grande to El Paso, where he became colonel of the 4th Arizona Cavalry. Obviously, the Union, when the war was over, probably before the war was over, decided that they would confiscate his ranch since he had turned into a rebel, which they did. And apparently it became some kind of a headquarters, supply depot. And that's where the 1st California was mustered out in 1866. Anybody know what this is? It is not a Colt Navy. It's a Metropolitan.
Yes.
Which was when the Colt factory burned down in 64. Metropolitan immediately started making revolvers. It's a Colt look-alike. Cylinder scene is different. It is a Navy scene, but it's of the Battle of Naval Battle of New Orleans in 1862. It's got the only patent that Colt still had was the safety pins on the back of the cylinder. Metropolitan got around that by putting safety notches there so the hammer could rest on the notch and not on the cap. No real history on this, other than it's a copy of a Sharps. Why would I buy a copy of the Sharps? Because it was made in 1863 in Richmond, Virginia. This is a copy of basically the 59 Sharps carbine made at the factory of this C.S. Robinson Company in Richmond. There were 2 different lock plates. The first one says, the early one says C.S. Robinson. The second one just has the serial number on it. The Confederates took over the factory late 62. So this is a 63 production. Looks exactly like the regular Sharps. The keys are, though, the brass hardware, lack of a pellet priming system. And what I found interesting in this model, there's a little hole put in here. That's because in the early ones, they had trouble with powder accumulating there and them blowing up. So they came up with a very easy solution. Just cut a hole there so the powder falls out. Most of you know this is a 36 caliber Savage revolver. Lever action revolver. Bang. Bang. pretty clumsy. The government bought quite a few of them. This one is probably a private purchase, but I don't really know. But it belonged to this man, John B. King of the 10th New York Cavalry. 10th New York Cavalry was involved in the largest cavalry battle of the Civil War at Brandy Station. The 10th New York, among others, charged up Fleetwood Hill, and King, who was 43 years old at the time, was badly wounded. Left on the battlefield, captured, of course. Presumably the gun got captured at the same time. That I don't know. Was taken to Libby Prison. He laid there for 10 days without medical treatment. Then they amputated his shoulder here. He lasted almost another month and then passed away. As we already heard a little bit about Allen and Wheelocks, this is the so-called Army model, 44 caliber. I remember how this works. The ramrod is with the trigger. I don't know, what is yours the same way? Yeah. And they're really barrel heavy, or this one is anyway. This has the original holster. This belonged to David William Euler, and that's him in 1886. Interesting fella. At the age of 15, in 1864, he was living on the family farm / ranch south of Des Moines, Iowa. He sided with the Confederacy. He left his home and joined up with the partisan ranger, William Quantrill. Rode with Quantrill as a scout until the war was over. The whole group, came from his great-granddaughter, I believe it was. Her father remembers seeing two friends visit their farm. This was in 1900. I'm a little ahead of myself. He talked about riding with Quantrill. He came home in 1870, 5 years after the war, but he never mentioned what he did for those 5 years. Now, these two friends that showed up in 1900, one was called Frank James, the other Cole Younger. I've got a pretty good idea what he did for those 5 years. And I often wondered if the farm didn't get very prosperous right about the time he came home. I've had this a long time. Purchased it from Tom Lewis, I don't know, probably 30 years ago. It's presentation quality. It's a pattern 1850s staff and field officer sword, but it's got silver-plated grips, silver-plated scabbard with fancy mounts. and a presentation plaque on the scabbard. And the plaque reads, "Presented by the loyal citizens of Bethlehem to Captain William H. Stolzenbach, Company C, 46th PVV, which stands for Pennsylvania Veteran Volunteers. Honor the Brave, Atlanta, 1864. This is Captain Stolzenbach. I don't believe the sword. I think this was taken before the Battle of Atlanta. The irony is, when he was presented the sword, he could no longer use it. He had left or lost his right hand at the Battle of Atlanta. And he later passed away, I believe it was in 76. He drowned swimming in the Atlantic Ocean outside of Atlantic City. One wonders if this wasn't post-traumatic stress syndrome. To go swimming in the Atlantic with one hand seems to me somewhat suicidal. This is one of my favorites. The handle may be made from a small ship's belaying pin. I have a ship's belaying pin, which is much bigger, but it's possible that for a small cutter or something that they had smaller belaying pins. But this is definitely not made for peeling potatoes. Heavy spear point blade. And the tang of the blade been brought up through, as many of them are, but instead being flat, it protrudes and is rounded over. So if you don't stab the guy, you can break his skull with this. As I said, I think I said it came out of Louisiana. It was identified as a Confederate Navy knife. Who knows? But it was certainly a fighting knife from Louisiana. And the scabbard itself is interesting. It's wood, covered in thin leather, with brass mounts. Well, a scabbard alone would be one heck of a weapon. I mean, you got knocked in the side of the head with that, you'd really know it. Another well-made Confederate knife with the remains of the scabbard. Copper scabbard. The blade is made from a file, very rough file, but the rest of the knife is very well made. I mean, nice oak handle, but you probably can't see it. But a star has been inlaid in the top of the handle. Now I've got one more thing that is not a gun, not a sword, it's not a knife. Probably all know what this is. It's a tompion that was put in the muzzle of a musket to keep the rain out. This is a mini ball stuck in the end of this. Somebody fired that 55 musket with this still in place. The wood, of course, shattered, And the mini ball is a perfect mushroom in the base of this. I imagine if he was still alive, his shoulder was still hurting. This was found near Fort Fillmore, New Mexico. Fort Fillmore was attacked, using the word loosely, by the Confederates under Colonel Baylor in very early 62 or late 61. I don't quite remember which. The commander of Fort Fillmore obviously had Southern sympathies, but he did not want to just give up. So he sent some of his troops out to skirmish. They fired a few shots, including this one that never went anyplace, and then said, "I give up." That's basically all I brought. Thank you.